Unheard Voices. Chapter 1, Echoes in the Evidence. Hello, and welcome back to Unheard Voices. This time, we'll be listening to Ashley Thompson. On the late night of August 12, 1997, I went out on a date at Lockhart Smokehouse. I returned to my apartment, 2508 Ivy Brook, in Arlington, early on August 13th. Later that morning, I called my boss to say I'd be late for work. I never showed up. On January 5, 1998, some hunters found my body in a wooded area near a creek, in the 6200 block of Baraboo Drive, Dallas. I'd been shot. During that time, a homicide task force had been formed by the Fort Worth Police Department. Several female bodies had turned up across the region. Mine was one of the cases they investigated. Stay tuned every Saturday for weekly episodes, where we give voices to those who can't speak. David ended the recording, saved the file, and shut his laptop with a soft click. He slid into bed, exhaustion pulling at him. The room was still, lit only by the dim red glow of his audio interface. In sleep, the memories crept in. The air had smelled like rain. And something sweet, jasmine maybe. There were flashes. Fragments. A red scarf flapping in the wind. Someone calling his name. A scream sharp, then swallowed by silence. He saw her. Maybe. A silhouette at the top of the stairs. Her face turned. Or missing. Blurred like an old photograph left in the sun too long. He woke in the dark, gasping. Heart hammering against his ribs like it wanted out. His shirt was soaked. The sheets too. Cold sweat clung to him, the kind that whispered something was wrong, even if you couldn't name it. He sat upright, unmoving. Just breathing. Fast. Shaky. Trying to piece it together. Then, across the room, he saw on the wall. Old newspapers. Crime scene photos. Handwritten notes. Pinned and webbed together by red string. At the center, written bold and unrelenting, who did it? Chapter 2, Whispers from the File. The night clung to the city in heavy silence. Outside, the occasional hiss of passing cars. Inside, only the low hum of David's computer and the soft buzz of his desk lamp. He sat at his desk, headphones around his neck, eyes on the screen. Ashley's voice still echoed in his mind. Her story had rattled something in him, not just sadness, not just anger. Something else. Familiarity. He leaned back and stared at the ceiling for a moment, letting the stillness settle. Unheard Voices had started years ago, back when he was barely old enough to rent the apartment he now lived in. It was supposed to be about giving victims a voice. It still was. But somewhere along the way, it had become something more personal. Something unfinished. He glanced toward the corkboard in the corner, his mother's case still taking up the most space. A shrine of frustration and stubborn hope. Mother of one found dead in Fort Worth Alley, NO suspects. The headline stared back at him, circled 3 times in red. He rubbed the back of his neck, stood up, and stretched. Just for a moment, he reached for a few older folders from his filing cabinet. Something in Ashley's case had struck a chord, but he couldn't name it. So he followed the feeling. He laid out a few past episodes, the ones that had stayed with him longer than most. Episode 1, Natasha Lane, covered year 1. Episode 2, Lana Walters, Season 2. Episode 3, Emily Monroe, last year. Episode 4, Ashley Thompson, just posted tonight. He flipped through them without purpose, just letting instinct guide him. They were years apart, different seasons, different moments in his life. He hadn't thought of them as connected before. Still didn't. But something about them, it stirred that gut feeling again. Same unease. Same weight behind the words. Like they were circling the same storm, without ever realizing it. He let out a breath and pushed the thought aside. There was no clear connection. Not yet. Just a feeling. He put the folders back and returned to his desk. Ashley's waveform still glowed faintly on the screen. With a few quick clicks, he closed the project and opened a new blank folder. He started digging around online, pulling up case files, local forums, archived police reports. That's when he stumbled on her name, Regina McLean. Murdered in 2018. Found near a drainage ditch just outside Mesquite. Gunshot wound. Purse still on her. No signs of struggle. No suspects. Barely covered in the press. One article. One photo. He opened the file and leaned in. She was smiling in the photo, a hand resting on her hip. A blurred brick wall behind her, maybe a restaurant. Nothing jumped out. Nothing obvious. Then came the police report. Sparse. A timeline. Witness statements. The medical examiner's note. And then, at the very bottom of the scanned scene log, something strange. Found torn scrap of paper in victim's jacket pocket. Handwriting, unknown. Says only, he hears you. David skimmed it once, made a mental note, then moved on, too focused on timeline inconsistencies to dwell on it. It didn't mean anything. Probably someone else's note. Something misplaced. He clicked over to the map, marked the scene. Then closed the file for the night. The room felt heavier somehow. He didn't know it yet, but that torn paper was never meant for Regina. Chapter 3, He Hears You. Year 2018. It had been quiet for years. Not peace. Not guilt. Just quiet. After the girl dead in Dallas, the one they called Ashley, he stopped. Not out of fear. Not because he felt watched. It just no longer served a purpose. There was no thrill in routine. He already knew how the story ended. They never caught him. They never came close. The task force was a mess. Faces changed. Files shuffled. Interest died faster than the girls did. So he faded. New name. New job. New walls to hide behind. But even in stillness, he listened. Sometimes, in motel rooms or long stretches of highway, he'd scroll through news feeds or crime forums. Quiet curiosity. Nothing more. He liked seeing how far they drifted from the truth. But one night, sometime in late 2018, the algorithm offered something new. A podcast. Unheard Voices. The name alone made his jaw twitch. He didn't click right away. He let the title episode sit in his mind like an itch beneath the skin. That name. He remembered. Not her face. Not what she wore. Just her name, caught in the back of his mind like something under a fingernail. Cassandra Cerna. She had been one of the early ones. Before the task force. Before people started to notice. He hadn't heard her name in years. He closed his eyes and let the voice continue. It was near perfect recounting, some facts off, some pieces missing, but it was enough. Someone was looking. Someone was talking about her. That hadn't happened before. He felt it behind his ribs, not fear, not thrill, just the slow tightening of a thread he thought had unraveled. Something woke up in him. He went back to his car. Didn't sleep. By morning, he had a plan. Her name was Regina McLean. She wasn't important. Not personally. Not like Cassandra. Not like any of them. But she was near. She was easy. She would be enough. He watched her from a distance for 3 days. She had patterns. She walked alone. Laughed with her phone against her cheek. Ate dinner late. Always tipped well. The night he followed her, the air was cool. She didn't scream. It was never about chaos. It was about control. By dawn, she was gone. Crime scene log, Mesquite, Texas, 2018. Found torn scrap of paper in victim's jacket pocket. Handwriting, unknown. Says only, he hears you. He folded the note himself. Took his time. It didn't matter who found it. What mattered was that it had been left. Not for Regina. For the voice. The one speaking for them. Chapter 4, Paper Voices. Back to 2023. The episode was live. David leaned back in his chair, his eyes tracking the final upload bar as the Regina McLean case hit the feed. The numbers ticked up. Regina's story weighed on him. There was something unsettling about the silence surrounding her death. Forgotten. Underreported. Almost as if someone wanted it that way. He had nearly missed her name, an accidental find during research. But now, her story was out there. Unheard no more. He didn't stop. The next case folder was already waiting. Madison Rios, 2019. A college senior, art major. Found murdered in a downtown stairwell after a gallery showing. No witnesses. No leads. David scanned the crime scene details with only half his attention until one line caught him: torn sketchbook paper recovered from backpack. Handwritten, "Paint me in silence." He blinked. He copied the quote into his research notes. Strange. He muttered. It wasn't part of the crime report. Not even mentioned by the media. Just there. He filed it away and moved on. Deborah N. King, 2020, a warehouse night worker, 46, lived alone. Found murdered behind an abandoned theater. David read the report slowly, bleary eyes, black coffee in hand. Then another line stopped him cold: folded note found in jacket, the echo that bled. He sat up straighter. 3 cases. 3 years. 3 victims. 3 lines. He returned to Madison's case and Regina's and read the phrase again: he hears you, paint me in silence. The echo that bled. Unsettling. Poetic. Specific. He opened a fresh document, labeled it, found phrases. He didn't know why yet. It was just a gut feeling. He'd been doing this long enough to know when something didn't belong. And these weren't just odd flourishes. They felt intentional. Like someone wanted them seen. But why? Jessica Nguyen, 2021, quiet. Well liked. Taught 4th grade. She disappeared walking home from school. Her body was later found in a park. David scrolled through the official report. Then he stopped. Message found on store receipt, tucked in her boot, echoes don't lie. David exhaled slowly. 4 victims. 4 years. 4 phrases. He opened his note document again and added the new line. A pattern was forming. The only connection? The lines. The tone. There was something deliberate here. He turned his gaze to the wall of his office. The corkboard. The names, the pins, the timelines. His mother's case at the center. These women weren't on that board yet. Mia Bell, 2022, aspiring musician. 26. Found outside a venue she never made it into. The final note: your voice woke me. David froze. His voice. That wasn't coincidence. It hit harder than the rest, like a whisper through a locked door. The others had felt like cryptic poetry. This one felt personal. Still, no context. No explanation. Just a line, buried in a police file no one had bothered to read twice. David didn't know what it meant. But he knew this wasn't over. He saved the files. Opened a new folder. Chapter 5, The One Who Listens. It had been bothering him for days. David stared at the document open on his desktop, 5 names, typed in bold. Regina McLean, Madison Rios, Deborah and King, Jessica Nguyen, Mia Bell. He wasn't supposed to think they were connected. Different counties. Different backgrounds. Different years. But it wouldn't leave him alone. He leaned back in his chair, eyes flicking between windows, maps, timelines, articles, police reports. A familiar symphony was building around him. It had started as an itch. Now it was a rhythm. The method: all shot. All clean. All without signs of robbery or assault. All left somewhere public or remote, but late, just late enough to be missed. The notes, each one strange. Almost poetic. Cryptic. Folded. Tucked away. He reread them now, the words echoing louder in his mind: he hears you, paint me in silence. The echo that bled. Echoes don't lie. Your voice woke me. They weren't just odd. They were consistent. A voice trying to be heard, but not by the police. By someone else. David pressed his palms into his eyes. By me? No, he whispered. He pulled up a digital map and dropped pins: Plano, Garland, Denton, Grand Prairie. Close. Spread just enough to be missed unless you were looking from far enough away. The kind of distance the police wouldn't see. He started pulling dates. Regina McLean, 2018. Madison, 2019. Deborah, 2020. Jessica, 2021. Mia, 2022. One each year. There it was, the rhythm. Precise. Controlled. Not spontaneous. Planned. A killer with patience. With ritual. And now, apparently, with an audience. He opened his research folder as he remembered a phrase in one of the early episodes and found Natasha Lane 1995, one of the first cases he'd covered back in the early days of the podcast. He skimmed the files. That line. That terrible line. The silence is final. A chill ran down his spine. A 7 phrase? The pattern was undeniable. Too tight. Too perfect. He paused. The voices. The clues. This wasn't random. He turned away from the computer screen, his eyes locking onto the wall where his corkboard was pinned with case files. He reached over and grabbed a fresh piece of paper. With a red marker, he began drawing circles around the phrases. He circled the dates. The cities. The rhythm. And then the name hit him, sharp and sudden, the Whisperer. Not because he shouted. Not because he made himself known. But because of how quiet he was. How careful. The Whisperer didn't force his way into the world. He crept into it. Unseen. Unheard. Until someone started listening back. David stared at the name in front of him. The Whisperer. It felt right. Instinctual. The killer wasn't loud. He wasn't reckless. He had a pattern, a message, a ritual. And for the first time in years, David felt like he was close. But how close? And to what? His eyes flicked back to his mother's case file. Had this been the same killer all along? Had the pattern existed before these women? Was his mother another name on a growing list? David couldn't be sure. But one thing was clear, the Whisperer was speaking. Chapter 6, The New Echo. Detective Samuel Sam Carter stood in front of the grimy window of the precinct's break room, staring out at the city. His reflection barely visible in the cracked glass, he could almost taste the dust in the air. Dallas was a place of contradictions, bright lights, big cars, and ambition. But there was a darker side to it, one that seemed to swallow up the truth. Sam had always been able to see things others couldn't. From a young age, he could pick up on the threads of people's lives, the way their stories didn't quite add up, how details skipped past others unnoticed. It wasn't always a gift, though. It was more like a curse. Growing up in the foster system, he had learned to read people quickly. You had to survive. But over the years, it had sharpened into something more. It was why he was here, assigned to one of the toughest and most thankless departments, cold cases. Before he became a detective, Sam had spent years on the streets. His sharp eye for detail earned him a reputation, but it wasn't always for the right reasons. Some people called him obsessive. Some called him a workaholic. But after seeing so many cases go cold, he became determined to fix what was broken. That's how he ended up with this assignment, fresh out of a few rough years working narcotics and violent crimes. The brass saw something in him, something they thought could bring fresh blood to the department's oldest, most unsolvable mysteries. "Hey, Carter. The DA wants to see you in her office," a voice said behind him. Sam turned to see his new partner, Detective Mia Torres, standing in the doorway. Mia had been on the force longer than him, but they'd only just been paired up. She was quiet, focused, and had a reputation for solving cases that others had given up on. Her sharp mind and dry humor made her a good fit for a guy like Sam. "Got it," he said, pushing off the counter and following her through the narrow hallway of the precinct. He hadn't expected a warm welcome. Cold cases weren't sexy, after all, but he wasn't here for applause. He was here to dig up the bones buried deep under the city's surface. They reached the DA's office, and the door swung open before Sam could knock. Inside, District Attorney Veronica Palmer sat behind her desk, a sharp woman in her late 40s with dark eyes that didn't miss a thing. To her right stood Chief of Police Reginald Moore, a towering figure who had seen his share of battles in the city's criminal underworld. Sam greeted them with a curt nod. "Carter," Palmer said, her voice smooth but firm. "I hear you've been looking into some of our cold cases. We've got some files stacked up, and frankly, we need someone who can see things others miss." "I don't miss much," Sam replied, his tone just as serious. "I've been going through the oldest cases. There are patterns in these things, if you look closely." Chief Moore leaned forward, his deep voice rumbling. "We know. But these cases are dead in the water. If anyone could have solved them, they would have. You're not here to waste your time on ghosts, Carter. We need answers. You're not just chasing old leads. We need closure for these families. Sam paused, eyeing the two of them. He could tell that the DA wasn't just talking about the victims, but about herself. Palmer had spent years trying to bring justice to families, but even she knew the cold case files were a black hole. I understand, Sam said. But sometimes the truth is hiding in plain sight. It's just a matter of connecting the dots. Let me dig into the cold cases, and I'll find something. I'll find connections. Mia's expression softened a fraction. She knew Sam's reputation for seeing patterns when others couldn't. He wasn't like most detectives. He didn't just see a string of disjointed incidents. He saw the flow, the way things bled together, connecting across time and space. Do what you need to do, Palmer said. But just know, no one here is holding their breath for a miracle. The mayor's breathing down our necks to close some of these, and we don't have time for wild goose chases. Sam nodded. He wasn't after miracles. Just answers. Hours later, Sam sat in his small office, the door cracked open to the bullpen beyond. His desk was piled high with files, photos, and handwritten notes. Cold cases. Files from the last 5 years. His fingers traced over the names, victims who had once been someone's daughter, sister, friend. People who'd vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but an unsolved case number. His eyes drifted to a file that had been sitting on the corner of his desk for days. It was marked with a single name, Madison Rios. He opened the file and scanned through the details. Art major, college senior, found dead in a stairwell downtown. A case that had never been solved, and one of the more recent ones. Then, as his eyes flicked over the crime scene photos, he noticed something strange. A torn page from a sketchbook, almost buried under a pile of forensic reports. The words written there caught his attention, "Paint me in silence." He froze. That wasn't like any note a killer would leave. Sam's fingers moved swiftly as he flipped through the file, now hype-focused. Another victim. Deborah N. King, a warehouse worker found behind an old theater. A folded note in her jacket read, "The echo that bled." He leaned back in his chair, feeling a stir of unease in his chest. The cases weren't connected by just the method of killing, there was something else. A message. He flipped to the next case in the pile, Jessica Nguyen. The receipt tucked into her boot said, "Echoes don't lie." And finally, Mia Bell, her case not even a year old. Her final note, "Your voice woke me." His heart skipped a beat. Sam knew a pattern when he saw one. These weren't random. These weren't just victim statements. These were messages. The same tone. The same rhythm. He opened a new document on his laptop, typing the names, the phrases, and the dates. Madison, 2019 Deborah, 2020 Jessica, 2021 Mia, 2022. The rhythm was undeniable. One each year, each with a message. It was clear now, these cases were connected. Sam stared at the screen, his mind racing. He wasn't sure who had been behind the killings yet, but he was certain of one thing, these weren't isolated incidents. He reached for the phone, dialing the DA's office. His gut was telling him something was about to break wide open. It was time to talk to the higher-ups. "Carter," Palmer answered, a hint of impatience in her tone. "I think I'm onto something," Sam said, his voice low but urgent. "There's a pattern. It's not just random. These cases are connected, and I need resources to track down whoever's behind them. We can't let this slip through our fingers." There was a pause on the other end. "Meet me in my office. Now," Palmer said, her voice firm. "And bring your findings." Sam's stomach tightened. He had no doubt that what he was about to present would change everything. He didn't yet know who David was, or that his podcast had been following the same trail, but in this moment, the path he was following felt like it had just crossed into dangerous territory. He grabbed the files and stood, the weight of what he was about to uncover settling over him like a heavy coat. It was time to connect the dots. Chapter 7, The Echoes Keeper. On the other side of town the night air was thick with the sounds of distant traffic, the hum of a city that never truly slept. Eric Lane. He'd been watching him for weeks. The music producer with the warm smile and the easy laugh. Too loud for a man so ordinary, too quiet in all the wrong places. The keeper saw much of Eric. He remembered him, his voice once a child now a man. His eyes had already mapped out the contours of the man's life, like an artist sketching the outline of a figure they would never paint. Eric was nothing more than a note in the melody, another victim, another piece of the puzzle. The keeper had always been a listener. He had to be. It was the only way to hear the truth. The unseen whispers, the forgotten cries, the voices that had no place in the world, those were the ones that mattered. It had all begun with Regina. A ghost in a world that didn't care to remember her. The echo hadn't meant to start with her again, but when he'd heard the name Cassandra, a forgotten truth in David's voice, something had shifted. Someone had finally noticed. It was the same with Eric. The man's life was a record, playing in the background of the city's noise. A life of quiet routine and saddened past. But it was the cracks in the surface that mattered. He was starting to fade, slipping through the cracks, unnoticed. And that was the moment the killer had chosen him. Not for what he was, but for what he could become. Eric had a soft voice, melodic hum that carried under the surface. There was a song buried in him. The echo had heard it the first time he'd walked past the music studio. It reminded him of child he knew talking to the TV news about his late mother, the faint echoes of sound slipping out into the night. Not much. But enough to know. A victim is never just a victim. Not to the killer. They're a bridge. A bridge to something greater. A message. The night had come. The stars had watched as he followed Eric's familiar path, his footsteps echoing softly against the cracked pavement. The killer was careful, patient. He knew the rhythm of the streets. He had learned it over the time, watching, waiting for the right moment. He wasn't like the others. He didn't rush. He didn't force the world into his design. Eric had stopped near a dark alley, and the whisperer had seen his chance. He'd been prepared, he always was. The silent step, the quiet presence. A note, folded and waiting. One message. And then, just like that, Eric had been taken. No violence, no unnecessary struggle. Just silence. The silence that had been written. The killer had left him there, alone, cold, with a message. The voice that died. But that wasn't the end. The killer wasn't finished yet. There was still more to do. He watched as the police arrived, the red and blue lights flashing in the distance. They were slow, taking their time, walking over the familiar ground that he knew better than anyone. They didn't hear the voices. But he did. He stood at the edge of the crowd, distant, observing. The investigators were busy. The detective with the dark eyes, Sam Carter, was already there, examining the scene. The killer knew the man. He had heard his name in the news, new detective assigned to cold cases in the Dallas area. Sam Carter. Another listener, another seeker. They were alike, but not the same. The whisperer smiled quietly to himself. And then, in the midst of the chaos, the keeper slipped a pair of earbuds into his ears, the sounds of the night blending with the soft hum of the latest episode of David's podcast. The episode was nothing out of the ordinary, a typical dive into the unspoken stories of the city's darker corners. David's voice, smooth and calculated, filled his mind as he stood there, blending with the crowd. As Sam Carter crouched beside Eric's lifeless body, the killer couldn't help but hear the echo of the moment, the final note in the long, quiet composition. The sirens faded into the night. But the whispers continued. Chapter 8, The Voice That Called Him. Moments before the attack. Sam stood before the DA's desk, the file spread out in front of him like a collection of loose threads waiting to be woven together. Palmer's sharp gaze never wavered as she scanned through the notes, while Chief Moore leaned against the wall, arms folded across his chest. "This is what I've got," Sam said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline that buzzed in his chest. "There are 5 cases. 4 victims. All connected by a series of cryptic phrases, each one left behind by the killer in a way that can't be coincidence." Palmer raised an eyebrow. "Cryptic phrases?" "Messages," Sam continued. "Regina McLean, Madison Rios, Deborah and King, Jessica Nguyen, and Mia Bell. Each case had a strange note. These weren't just random, off-the-cuff statements. These were deliberate. They're almost poetic." He flipped through the file, showing them the lines one by one. "Paint me in silence," he paused, glancing at both of them. "He hears you, the echo that bled, echoes don't lie, and your voice woke me." Chief Moore frowned, pushing off from the wall. So, we've got a serial killer leaving cryptic messages, but why? Sam's eyes met his. The pattern is clear. Each victim was chosen carefully, each method precise. No sign of forced entry, no sexual assault, no robbery. Just death. But it's the rhythm that's important, one victim a year, the notes each year building upon the last. The first was in 2018, Sam continued, pointing to the timeline on his digital map. Then 2019, 2020, 2021, and now 2022. The killer's following a schedule, and it's methodical. The notes themselves have a consistent tone, almost like they're speaking to someone, or something. And you think all of this points to the same killer? Palmer asked, her voice low, skeptical. I'm not just guessing, Sam said, tapping the screen. These phrases? They're connected. They're almost like parts of a riddle, a puzzle that only the killer understands. It's not random. It's deliberate. There's someone out there sending a message, and if we don't catch it now, the next victim could be right around the corner. There was a long pause as the DA and Chief Moore exchanged a look. Palmer finally broke the silence. All right, Carter, she said, leaning back in her chair. We'll give you the resources. But you better have something concrete. We've been chasing ghosts for too long, and the mayor wants results. Sam nodded, his jaw set. He'd seen how cold cases could drag on, how bureaucracy could grind down any hope of progress. But this wasn't just another case. He could feel it in his bones. This was different. Before he could say more, his phone buzzed on the table. He saw the caller ID, Detective Torres. He picked up immediately. Carter, Mia's voice crackled through the receiver, sharp with urgency. You need to get to the scene. Now. What happened? Sam asked, his pulse quickening. It's a murder, Sam. A man was found dead in an alley, and there's something strange about it. The victim's name is Eric Lane. Sam's mind raced, but he kept his voice steady. Eric Lane. What's strange about it? I don't know yet, but the bodies, there's something odd. A note was found with him. I need you here, Sam. Sam's stomach twisted. He knew this could be nothing. But it also could be everything. He didn't have time to waste. I'm on my way, an hour later. The sun had barely begun to dip behind the skyline as Sam pulled up to the crime scene. The flashing blue and red lights bathed the alley in an eerie glow, casting shadows that stretched long across the pavement. A small crowd of onlookers was being held back by uniformed officers, and the air was thick with tension. Mia stood near the edge of the scene, her expression grim. Where's the body? Sam asked, scanning the area. Over here, Mia said, leading him to the far end of the alley. The victim was a man in his mid-30s, his body slumped against the side of a dumpster, the life drained from him. His clothes were nondescript, nothing that stood out as unusual. But what caught Sam's attention immediately was the note. This time, it was taped to the man's chest. He pulled the note free with gloved hands and held it up. The message was stark, clear, and chilling, the voice that died. Sam's blood ran cold. The phrasing was even more direct than before, no metaphor, no ambiguity. This was a statement. A final word. And it felt more personal than the others. Who is he? Sam asked, turning back to Mia. Mia replied, her voice tight. He's a local music producer. No criminal record, no ties to anything shady. Sam's mind raced. Another victim. Another puzzle piece. But this time, there was something more, something different about the note. It wasn't just a cryptic message. It was an accusation. A condemnation. The killer had left a deliberate mark, but the victim didn't feel like an innocent bystander. It felt deliberate. Mia glanced at Sam, her eyes searching his face. What do you think, Sam? He shook his head, still staring at the note. I think this is connected. This isn't just some random act of violence. This is our guy. What do you mean, our guy? Mia asked, confused. The speaker, Sam said, the name suddenly slipping from his lips. The killer was now becoming something more, an identity that was taking shape. This is his work. The rhythm, the phrases, they're all part of the same pattern. The speaker doesn't just kill. He sends messages. Mia blinked, processing. The speaker? Really that name? Yes, Sam replied, voice steady. This killer, he's escalating. Each time, the phrases get bolder, more direct. The voice that died. It's not a coincidence. Mia stepped back, looking at the body again. We need to notify the higher-ups. This changes everything. Sam nodded, but his mind was already far ahead. I already took care of it. Meanwhile, miles away, David sat in front of his computer, his fingers moving quickly over the keys. He'd just seen the news about the latest murder, Eric Lane. He couldn't explain why, but something clicked when he heard the victim's name. Eric Lane, he whispered to himself. His heart raced as his fingers typed in the search bar. The more he read about the man, the more certain he became, this wasn't just another random victim. This was part of something bigger. Something he had been chasing for months. David's eyes flicked to the corkboard on his wall, still covered in case files, pins, and yarn connecting names and dates. And there it was, in a cut newspaper: orphan child Eric Lane, mother Natasha Lane, murder in alley. He stared at the name. Something in his gut told him this was the moment he'd been waiting for. The note left with Eric Lane, the one David would likely hear about soon, had sealed it for him. The phrase was personal. It wasn't a message for the world. It was a message for him. The voice that died. The whisper talking to him. For the first time in years, David felt the pull of the case sharpen. The killer wasn't just leaving cryptic notes. He was sending messages directly to someone. And David knew, instinctively, that he was the one being spoken to. This wasn't just about finding answers anymore. This was about understanding the message. And David was starting to realize that the whisperer wanted him to hear it. Chapter 9, Through the Echoes. The alley was colder than it should have been. Sam Carter stood at the scene long after the forensics team had packed up. The body was gone. The blood had been washed into the gutter. But the echo of it, that moment, still lingered in the air. He stared at the brick wall where Eric Lane's body had slumped, the taped note now sitting in an evidence bag inside his coat pocket. The voice that died. A phrase that didn't just sound poetic, it sounded intentional. Like the others. He knew the other cases were connected. He was sure of it now. But this one? This one was louder, bolder. Pull all security footage from within a 3-block radius, Sam had told a patrol officer earlier that evening. I want everything. Street cams. Doorbell cams. I don't care if it's grainy, I want it. Hours later, inside the precinct's cramped AV room, he sat in front of a bank of monitors as footage flickered past in silence. He was on his 3rd cup of coffee and his 5th hour of footage when he finally saw it. At first, it looked like nothing. Just a crowd forming behind the police tape, faces turned to flashing lights, some filming on their phones. Normal. But then there. In the corner of one camera's wide lens. A figure. Still. Watching. Not reacting. Not recording. Just present. The timestamp was 8:12 p.m., minutes after the scene had been secured. The man was standing half in shadow, his face obscured beneath the hood of a black jacket, the light from the patrol car reflecting off his silhouette like a smear of ink. Sam leaned in, heart quickening. He froze the frame and enhanced it as much as the ancient system allowed. No clear face. But the stance was familiar. Controlled. Deliberate. Everyone else was moving. Talking. Taking photos. This man was still. Focused. Listening. Got you, Sam muttered under his breath. He printed the frame and pinned it to the corkboard in his office, right next to the notes from the other murders. A new question took shape in his mind, not who is the killer. But how long has he been watching? Because if he was bold enough to come back to the scene, he might already know who's following him. David hadn't slept. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, abandoned beside his laptop as lines of text blinked back at him on the screen. He'd spent the last day spiraling down the dark well of his own archives. Old episodes. Listener tips. Interviews he hadn't thought about in years. But it had been the messages that cracked it open. They had always haunted him, but now, they spoke. He'd stumbled across a pattern buried in an old spreadsheet he used to track cold cases for a bonus series back in 2022. Back then, they'd seemed disconnected. But now, and there were 2 more. 1995 Dallas. A waitress named Emily Monroe. Killed in a parking garage. Shot, execution style. A note found in her apron pocket, whispers carry farther than screams. The city had forgotten. But the killer hadn't. David sat back in his chair, staring at the web of cases pinned across his corkboard. He connected them one by one, the red yarn crossing years, lives, and neighborhoods like arteries. A timeline of silence, 1994 to 98, then nothing. For 2 decades, the voices went quiet. Until 2018. He didn't know what woke him back up. But he knew what had happened since. The voice had returned. Subtle at first. Unnoticed. Then louder. Sharper. Eric Lane was the scream in a long line of whispers. David's fingers hovered over his keyboard as he opened a new project folder. Episode 59, The Whisperer. He'd never directly talked to the killer on the episodes. But this one is different. This wasn't just another story. It was a revelation. For the first time, the city would hear it. Every clue. Every name. Every echo left behind. A serial killer was moving through their streets. And David was about to say his name. He reached for the mic, paused. Took a breath. And hit record. Chapter 10, The Silence Breaks. David. The mic blinked red, recording. David leaned forward, voice low, calm, but electric with tension. You're about to hear something I've never done on this podcast before. Not just a case. Not just a story. But a pattern. A voice moving beneath the noise, between the lines of our lives. This isn't just a killer. This is something else. Something calculated. I call him the Whisperer. His fingers swept across the desk, papers fanned out in controlled chaos, autopsy reports, newspaper clippings, police transcripts, and faded photocopies. Names that had once been just cases were now connected like lines in a song. Regina McLean, Madison Rios, Deborah and King, Jessica Nguyen, Mia Bell, Eric Lane, and before them Emily Monroe, Natasha Lane, Ashley. Every year since 2018, someone has died under nearly identical circumstances, public setting, single gunshot, minimal evidence, no motive, and always, a message. David reached for the printed notes, one by one, his voice steady as he read. He hears you paint me in silence, the echo that bled, echoes don't lie, your voice woke me, the voice that died, and from the past. Whispers carry farther than screams, these are not random words. They're verses. And together, they build a voice trying to be heard. David paused the recording, hand frozen above a file he hadn't touched in months, Cassandra Cerna. His mother. He hesitated, then opened it. A chill ran through him. He'd looked through the file 100 times before, but something about the other notes, had reoriented his mind. He scanned her crime scene photos again. The autopsy report. The inventory list. Then he saw it. A battered hardback of her and his favorite book, Strange Ritual, from childhood. It had been catalogued, but dismissed by police as unrelated. But now, David noticed something else. In the inside cover, written in delicate but deliberate hand, she recited to him. I listened, too. He blinked. No, it had never stood out before. It was too small, too vague. It hadn't even made it into the official report summary. But now, it screamed. It matched. Not just in tone. In style. In ritual. His mother hadn't been the first episode. She had been the origin. He hit record again, voice low, shaking. My mother, Cassandra Cerna, was killed in 1994. She's the reason I started this podcast. But maybe it's the reason he did. Because she wasn't just a victim. She might have been his first. His voice cracked but didn't break. I've been chasing him without realizing he started with me. He finished the episode in one breathless hour, every word more urgent than the last. The story twisted together, and by the time he hit upload, the city outside his window was beginning to wake. By noon, it was everywhere. Local news latched on first. Headlines blinked across the web. Unheard no more, podcaster claims serial killer active for 6 years. The Whisperer, audio journalist connects unsolved murders. Is there a serial killer in Dallas? David didn't check his messages. His inbox was already swamped. Journalists, listeners, anonymous names with half-whispered tips. The dam had broken. At police station, Sam was in the evidence room when Torres found him. "Hey," she said, stepping into the doorway. "You need to hear something." Sam didn't look up from the folder he was flipping through. "What is it? You ever listen to Unheard Voices?" He finally glanced at her. "The podcast?" "Yeah. Couple episodes." "Well, you're gonna want to listen to the new one." She slid her phone through the table, the episode already queued. "It dropped a few hours ago. It's about our case." Sam raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, our case?" Torres nodded toward the phone. "Hit play." He did. The first words froze him in place. "I call him the Whisperer." Sam sat down, silent. The voice was calm, practiced. But the content? Explosive. The episode covered everything: victim timelines, matching methods, the cryptic messages, and then it went deeper. Names, counties, years. And then? Cassandra Cerna. His eyes narrowed. "My mother," he rewound that part and listened again. The podcaster wasn't just a random conspiracy guy. He was personally connected. Sam turned to Torres. "Who the hell is this guy?" She shook her head. "We're looking. Nothing public. Just a name. David Cerna. Get his file. Everything he's posted. Every episode. I want a list of every case he's touched." Torres nodded. "Already on it." Sam leaned back, the chill creeping up his spine. Whoever this guy was, he had just done what the police hadn't. He hadn't solved it. But he'd lit a match. And now the whole city was watching the flame. The echo. He was seated in the back of a corner cafe when he pressed play. Headphones in. Hood up. A cup of coffee untouched. He listened, expression still, eyes lowered to the tabletop. The voice came through. "I call him the Whisperer." A small smile formed. "He's left messages in every murder, each one building on the last, like notes in a score." He tilted his head, listening not just to the words, but to the tone. To the fear beneath them. The awe. But then the reveal. Cassandra Cerna, my mother. The smile faded. He remembered her. Flashback, Cassandra. The last time he saw her. It was late summer of '94. They had met at a gallery. She was standing still in front of a Rothko paint and whispered, "This reminds me of insomnia." Then turned to him, a smile curling at the edges of her voice. "Not deep. Just true." He asked her out. She agreed. He'd picked her up for dinner, something casual. She opened the door wearing denim and soft laughter, the kind that settled into a room without asking permission. He remembered the house, modest, warm, humming with old music and the scent of lavender. And the boy. David. 8, maybe 9. Big eyes, dark hair, holding the book too large for his lap. The stereo behind him, something played, a delicate orchestral swell, strings dancing just above a piano line. Not pop. Not jazz. Classical. It surprised him. "This is David," she'd said with that quiet pride. "My son." The boy looked up at him, unreadable, curious, but cautious. He nodded, didn't smile. He knelt to meet him eye to eye. "Hey there," the Whisperer had said softly, something gentle in his voice he hadn't known he could still find. "You like stories?" David had nodded, then pointed toward the speakers without saying a word. "And music," Cassandra added, brushing a hand through her son's hair. "Mostly classical. He's obsessed with symphonies. Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, even Mahler. He says it helps him see the books in his head." "It's that right?" The Whisperer replied, looking to him. The boy said. "Mama says symphonies are like stories without words." "And do you believe her?" The boy nodded. "She doesn't lie." The Whisperer hadn't understood the weight of that moment until now. He glanced at the stereo. The movement rising. A tension building, then breaking. It wasn't just music. It was a narrative without words. David looked back at the book, flipping a page with quiet purpose, the music swelling behind him. The echo remembered the way the two things, sound and story, folded into each other in that small room. He hadn't planned it back then. Not yet. But something inside him had already started to shift. The date itself was remarkable, until it wasn't. Wine, pasta, conversation that dipped and returned like waves under cloud lights. She spoke about poetry, myths, grief. She talked about silence as though it were a country she'd once lived in. He didn't feel love, not the way people imagined it. But interest. Curiosity. And Cassandra, she had mystery. She wasn't like the others. She didn't fear silence. She moved inside it. But as the night wore on, something in her changed. Not suddenly. Gradually. Her eyes grew quieter. Her body stiffer. Her laugh lost its echo. It was during dessert, chocolate and strawberries and a shared glass of Cabernet, when she looked at him as if something had peeled away. A layer she hadn't seen before. Or hadn't wanted to. She didn't say anything in the moment. Not directly. The night ended normally. A polite goodbye. No invitation inside. Just a hand on the doorknob and a long silence between them. But in that silence, she looked him in the eye and said, "You carry something within you." He stared quietly. She added, with a faint shake of her head, "But I don't want it near my son, and I think we're too different. Thank you for the evening. Take care." And with that, she gently closed the door. Remembered the echo of her words like they were meant for who he truly was. Weeks passed. And then he found her again. Not at home. Not with her son nearby. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere no one would look. She hadn't screamed. She just looked at him and said, "I knew you'd come back." And when she fell, the something slipped from her bag. A book she always carried. He opened the cover and wrote inside it, "Not for her. For the boy." She recited to him. I listened, too. He leaned back slowly as the episode continued, hearing the story of himself told by the boy. Not the whisperer. Not to him. He didn't call himself that. No, he had always saw himself as. Chapter 11, Echoes in the Blood. Sam. The station was buzzing. The murder of Eric Lane had already stirred tension. But now, with that podcast episode going viral, the pressure had turned suffocating. Calls were coming down from city officials, federal agencies were sniffing around, and the press circled like sharks. This wasn't just a murder anymore. It was a pattern. A voice. A myth in the making. Sam stood in front of the caseboard, red string connecting 6 photos. For recent victims. And the ones from the 90s. And in the center, a note card, pinned in thick black ink, "The Whisperer?" He muttered under his breath. "Still don't like that name." Torres stepped in, holding fresh stills. "Got something." Surveillance footage from a liquor store across the street from the alley where Eric Lane died. She dropped them on the table. A shape. No face. But a presence. A tall figure. Long coat. Hood drawn. The silhouette hovered near the edge of the crowd. Never looked at the camera. Barely moved. Like a shadow waiting for its cue. Sam exhaled slowly. He was there. "We ran it through recognition software," Torres said. "No matches. But the timestamp checks out. He was there before we arrived. He watched us." Sam stared at the blurry image longer than necessary. "Then, he makes mistakes when he wants to be seen." Torres raised a brow. "What's that supposed to mean?" "He's sending a message. Not just with the victims. With his presence. He doesn't just kill. He performs. He wants an audience." Torres hesitated. "And David? The podcaster?" Sam rubbed the back of his neck. "We've traced the podcast to an LLC registered out of state. Clean. Too clean. No socials. No address. He's covering his tracks, but we'll find him." "You think he's involved?" "No," Sam said. Then, quieter, "But he's inside this. Deep. If he's right about his mother, this started long before we noticed. And he's not just telling the story anymore, he's part of it." David. The sun had set an hour ago, but David hadn't noticed. It hit him differently tonight. Not as evidence. But as memory. It wasn't just a cryptic phrase. It was personal. The killer had written it for someone. Not the cops. Not the world. For him. He could see flashes now, his mother's voice reading aloud, soft and low. His own head resting in her lap, a book open under the dim yellow lamp. And maybe, just maybe, a stranger once sitting too quietly nearby. Watching. Listening. His stomach turned. The killer wasn't announcing himself back then. He was, remembering. David turned slowly to his mic. His hand hovered. Then he pressed record. His voice was quieter than usual. No introduction. No drama. Just truth. My mother wasn't just the first victim. She was the first verse. The first name in a pattern I didn't understand until now. And someone has been listening to me since before I ever spoke into this mic. He exhaled. He was there. Not just in the alley. Not just in the case files. In my life. I think I met him. Once. I just don't remember well. The Whisperer. He stood in the alley where Eric Lane had died. No one expected him to return. Not this soon. Not while the yellow tape still fluttered like dead ribbon. Not while the scent of bleach and blood clung to the bricks. But this place, like so many before, was part of the performance. A verse. They called him many names now. The Whisperer. The Speaker. The Killer in silence. But none of them knew the truth. He wasn't telling a story. He was finishing one. He pulled a small slip of paper from his coat and unfolded it. A phrase already written. Measured. Clean. A whisper caught in ink. There a painless death awaits him who can no longer bear the sorrows of this life. He left the paper where the body of Eric laid, then slipped on his headphones. The podcast played again. He wasn't sure why he kept listening. Maybe to feel seen. Or maybe to see how much David had remembered. And tonight, he had remembered too much. The keeper smiled faintly as the alley swallowed him again. The echo was growing louder. And the boy was finally listening. Chapter 12, The Voice Unmasked. David. The morning was colder than it should have been. David stood at the top of the concrete steps outside his apartment, hands buried in the sleeves of his hoodie. He hadn't slept. Not a minute. Not after the episode he released hours ago, the one that cracked open a vault no one had wanted to admit was real. It wasn't just a podcast anymore. It was a trigger. He didn't know the cops were already on their way. The unmarked car rolled to the curb with quiet finality. Two detectives stepped out, their coats too clean for the neighborhood. The taller one held up his badge. David Cerna? David blinked, tightening his grip inside his sleeves. Yeah. We'd like you to come with us. He hesitated. Am I being arrested? The second one, heavier and visibly exhausted, shook his head. Not yet. But we have questions. You'll want to cooperate. Sam Carter stepped around from the car, arms crossed. His expression wasn't hostile, just heavy with expectation. Let's go, he said. David nodded and stepped into the car. Inside the precinct. The air inside the station smelled like cold coffee and old carpeting. David sat across from Carter and Torres at a small table in an interview room. A single red light blinked on the recorder between them. You made a hell of noise, Torres said, flipping through a printout of transcripts from David's podcast. David leaned in. It's all in the case files. You had the same evidence I did. You just didn't look. David stared at the recorder. He started with my mother. And I think he knew me. Torres raised an eyebrow. You're saying you met this guy? I don't remember. Not clearly. Just flashes. But that note, he paused. It wasn't written for the world. It was written for me. He knew I'd find it. Eventually. Sam leaned forward, elbows on the table. We're not treating you as a suspect, David. But you're close to this. Closer than anyone's ever been. If he's reaching out to you, he's not reaching out, David said. He's performing. And I've become the audience. They questioned him for over an hour. About the podcast. About his research. About the timeline of his obsession. They didn't say it, but he knew what they were really wondering. Was he too close? Too damaged? Too useful? When they let him go, a camera crew was already outside the station. He ignored the shouted questions and walked straight through the crowd, hoodie pulled low over his face. His name was no longer anonymous. But the story wasn't over. Not yet. Elsewhere, the Whisperer's room. The TV flickered in the corner, casting soft light across the room's padded walls. The audio was low, barely audible under the hum of an old shortwave radio. On the screen, David was being led from the precinct, shoulders tense, eyes heavy with sleep deprivation and something worse, memory. The banner across the newsfeed read, "Podcaster at Center of Serial Killer Investigation." The Echo sat in a well-worn armchair, his coat folded neatly beside him. A mug of tea steamed in his hand, untouched. He watched David's face on the screen, watched the boy he had seen long ago become a man. The voice in the interview cracked faintly through the radio. Just a clip, a breath. But it was enough. "You're finally listening," the keeper whispered to himself. He picked up his notebook. On the first page of a new section, he wrote, "If death is welcome, let him seek it there." Then he turned to the pages he had written before, filled with names, phrases, deaths. Each one a chord in the symphony. A silence sculpted into meaning. He chose one phrase. Short. Measured. Deliberate. "There a painless death awaits him who can no longer bear the sorrows of this life." He slid it into a plastic sleeve, folded it, and pressed it between the pages of book. A favorite, now more than just metaphor. He paused over one name on the final page of his list. Not chosen yet. But very close. He looked back at the screen. "Soon," he murmured, and the static swallowed his voice. Chapter 13, The Keeper's Score. David. The days bled, combing through old files, hours spent staring at the wall, hours spent listening to the silence that now filled his apartment. The podcast had done its job, the city was listening. But the cost was becoming clearer with each passing moment. He hadn't heard from the police since his interview. No calls. No follow-ups. It was as if they had gotten what they needed and moved on. But David couldn't move on. Not yet. The note he'd found in his mother's belongings, the one that had haunted him since childhood, kept resurfacing in his thoughts. She recite to him. I listened, too. What did it mean? He needed answers. He stood from his desk, restless. The corkboard near the wall was now cluttered with printed screenshots, hand-scribbled quotes, torn photos, and red thread connecting timelines. His mother was no longer a single file in a dusty cabinet. She was the opening stanza in a symphony of violence. And now, the music was swelling again. Elsewhere, crime scene near the past. It happened just after dusk. A woman in her 40s, walking home from the train station, took the long way down Eastbourne Avenue, a narrow residential street bordered by chain-link fences and boarded-up homes. The shot was precise. Clean. No witnesses. Her body was found half an hour later, sprawled on the edge of a crumbling sidewalk just 4 blocks from where Cassandra Cerna had been murdered in '94. The crime scene was eerily minimal, no signs of struggle, no wallet taken, no personal belongings disturbed. Just a single object placed gently beside the victim's hand, a worn book. Tucked inside its pages, was a folded note written in careful, deliberate script. There a painless death awaits him who can no longer bear the sorrows of this life. Detectives cordoned off the street. The book was bagged. The message was sent to forensics. But to anyone paying attention, the meaning was immediate and terrifying. He was returning. To where it all began. David. He saw it first on a crime blog. Then on a subreddit. Then it was everywhere. Woman killed few blocks from Cassandra Cerna's murder site. Victim left with book and note. David stared at the screen, unmoving, as the words burned into his retinas. His mother had a copy, once. It used to sit on their shelf when he was a kid. She read it to him, and he remembered the cover, the crown, the symbol, the name. It had captivated him then. It terrified him now. He printed the photo of the crime scene and pinned it beneath his mother's. A circle was closing. And the music was playing again. At the station. Case files had a particular smell to them, aged paper, dried ink, and something more elusive. Like the breath of time itself. Sam Carter had spent most of the morning elbow-deep in the archives, the sound of creaking folders and rustling documents louder than the chatter of the precinct outside. Torres stepped in, carrying 2 coffees. She didn't even wait for a greeting before sliding one across the cluttered desk. "You've been on that wall for 5 hours," she said. "You look like you're about to start speaking in haikus." Sam didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on a folder dated 1998. The name on the cover, Elaine Brandon. A black and white photo sat inside, depicting a woman found in an alley, face turned toward the bricks, eyes half-lidded, like she'd been trying to listen to something only she could hear. "This one was ruled a robbery gone bad," Sam muttered. "No suspect. No follow-up." He slid the photo to her. Taped to the inside of the woman's shirt, just beneath her right hand, was a scrap of paper. Torres leaned in. "The quiet ones never forget," she read aloud. Her brow furrowed. "That wasn't in the summary. Wasn't in the digital report either," Sam said. "I only found it buried in the original scene documentation." The note was dismissed. Labeled non-evidentiary. She tilted her head. "And now you think it connects?" "I know it connects." He tapped the board behind him, where photos and notes had begun to form a constellation. Cassandra Cerna. Elaine Brandon. Jessica Nguyen. Eric Lane. Every message. Every signature. Same rhythm. "Why now?" Torres asked. "Why resurface after all this time?" Sam stared at the red pins on the map. Maybe he never stopped. Maybe we just stopped listening. Her phone buzzed. Torres glanced at the screen and swore under her breath. "We've got another one," she said. "Southside. 3 blocks from where Cassandra Cerna was killed." Sam stood before she finished. "Let's move." The scene. The victim, a woman in his early 40s, lay slumped against the wall, eyes open. One clean shot. No signs of struggle. Torres crouched near the body. Same method. Same message? Sam didn't answer immediately. He'd already seen it. Near the victim's hand lay a book. The cover was aged, its spine cracked, but intact. Sam pulled on his gloves and opened the front flap. Tucked inside was a folded note in a plastic sleeve. It read, "There a painless death awaits him who can no longer bear the sorrows of this life." Sam's gut clenched. The address, the timing, the message, it was all deliberate. He turned slowly, scanning the shadows, as if expecting the killer to be standing just out of reach, watching the score unfold. "He is getting close," Sam whispered. "Where she died." Torres looked up. "Cassandra?" He nodded. "It's not just a murder. It's a reprise." David. Something, intuition, dread, had pulled him from sleep before the sun had fully risen. The apartment was silent except for the hum of his laptop still running on the desk. He poured coffee with a trembling hand and opened the email inbox for the podcast account. Among the sea of spam, tips, and media requests, one new subject line caught his eye. Southside. The King returns. No sender name. Just a location. A set of GPS coordinates. And a timestamp. He froze. It was a place he knew. Elsewhere, the keeper. He watched the news report replay on a muted television in the corner of a different room. Cleaner. More sparse. Just a chair, a table, a book missing its title page, and a single bulb dangling from the ceiling. The reporter's voice was silent, but the words scrolled clearly across the screen. Another body discovered near the 1994 murder of Cassandra Cerna. Book left at the scene raises new questions about the whisperer. He smiled faintly. The tempo was shifting again. And this time, David was getting closer to the melody. Just not fast enough. Chapter 14, The Final Movement. David. The house stood in front of him, just as it had when he was a child, dilapidated, quiet, and filled with memories that whispered just below the surface of his mind. The walls seemed to lean in, as if listening, and he couldn't shake the feeling that it had been waiting for him. But now, this was where the answer lay. The coordinates, the timestamp, it all pointed here, to his childhood home. David's heart beat faster. This was the moment. He had come full circle. David stepped inside, his boots dragging lightly against the floor. The faintest groan from years of disuse. The air was thick with dust and memories that hadn't been touched in a long time. The faint trace of his mother's perfume that never seemed to leave the house, even after all these years. The living room was just as he remembered, dark wood furniture, a few faded family photos on the walls, a fireplace that hadn't seen a flame in decades. And then, something unexpected. There was music. The soft, deliberate notes of a piano echoed through the rooms, filling the house in a way that seemed to make the walls breathe. David froze. It was a melody he knew, but not one he had heard in a long time. The sound came from the back room, where his mother used to practice. The door stood ajar, and the faint glow of a single lamp flickered inside. He couldn't move for a moment, the melody drawing him in with a strange, hypnotic pull. It was unsettling, like an old memory made flesh, something he couldn't escape. Then, he stepped forward, the floorboards groaning beneath his weight, echoing the sound of his heartbeat. As he pushed the door open, the scene that greeted him was not what he expected. There was no shadowy figure waiting to confront him. No mysterious killer hiding in the dark. Instead, he found himself face to face with an old piano, its keys still being pressed gently by long, delicate fingers. The sound filled the room, an eerie, haunting lullaby that seemed to echo through the very core of him. The person at the piano was someone he hadn't expected to see again. The music stopped abruptly. David blinked, his breath catching in his throat. The man at the piano was tall, unnervingly thin, his limbs too long and angular, like a marionette whose strings had been pulled too tightly. His face was smooth, almost unnaturally so, with a strange, porcelain-like pallor that made him look like something sculpted rather than human. His eyes, wide, black as obsidian, locked onto David with a cold intensity, unblinking and unfeeling. The room seemed to grow colder, the shadows thickening, wrapping around David like an inescapable fog. The man didn't move, didn't say a word. He simply sat there, his fingers now still, resting over the keys of the piano, like a spider waiting for its prey to make a fatal mistake. David took a step forward, his throat dry. "Who are you?" The man's lips barely moved, but the air seemed to vibrate with the weight of his voice. "I am the one who writes the symphony, David," he said, his voice smooth and cold, like a whisper that carried a sense of finality. "I am the composer. And you, David, are the one who has played the melody all along. You just never realized you were a part of the score." David's pulse hammered in his chest. His mind struggled to make sense of the words, the coldness that filled the room. The world felt hollow, the weight of this revelation suffocating him. "I don't understand," David murmured, stepping back. "What are you talking about? What do you want from me?" The composer's eyes remained locked on him, unblinking. The silence between them stretched taut, like the moments before a storm. "What do I want?" The composer repeated, his voice soft, almost affectionate. "I want you to hear the last note. The final chord of this symphony. You followed the music, David. You've heard every movement, every piece. Now, it's time for the conclusion." David's breath quickened, his chest tightening. Something about the way he said it, it wasn't just a threat. It was an invitation. But to what? "I've been waiting for you, David," the composer continued, standing now, his long fingers brushing lightly across the piano keys as if caressing them, drawing the faintest of sounds from the strings. "I've been waiting for you to find your place in this. And now, we're almost there. The last movement. You will complete it." David's mind raced. His heart pounded in his throat, every instinct screaming for him to run. But his feet felt frozen to the ground. The man's cold gaze seemed to pierce through him, unraveling him. "I've watched you, David. Watched you follow every note, every clue, like a dog chasing a rabbit. But it's more than just the murders, isn't it? It's the music. You've heard it, haven't you? You felt the pull." The composer stepped toward him, moving fluidly, almost gliding, his movements graceful and unsettling in their unnatural smoothness. "You were always a part of this, David. The question was never whether you would find me. It was whether you could accept your role in this final piece." David's breathing grew shallow. The composer's voice was quiet, almost hypnotic, as if he were reciting a lullaby designed to lull David into submission. David's body froze, the sensation of his own skin crawling. "No," he whispered. "I'm not part of this. You're insane. This isn't," but before he could finish, the composer's hand shot out, too fast, too fluid. A thin, razor-sharp blade gleamed in his hand, the flicker of steel catching the light as the composer closed the distance between them. The music was still ringing in the air, reverberating in David's ears like a nightmare he couldn't escape. The blade slashed through the air, close to David's chest, narrowly missing. The killer moved toward him again, fluid, unnatural, his long limbs reaching for David. The blade was a blur. This time, it sliced across David's side, tearing through the fabric of his jacket and into his flesh. David gasped, his breath coming in ragged bursts, his body screaming for him to run. But his legs wouldn't move. The man was faster, closing the distance, pushing him back toward the wall. A sharp pain shot through his leg as the killer slashed again, the knife catching David's thigh. He could feel his blood pooling beneath him, staining the floor. The man was unhurried. Methodical. Every strike precise. Every movement cold. His legs gave out. He dropped to his knees, clutching his side, eyes wide, panic rising like a flood. The killer stood over him now, the knife gleaming in his hand. David's chest heaved with each breath, the blood pouring from him, but he couldn't let it end here. Not like this. With a grunt, he reached for anything, his fingers closing around a broken chair leg nearby. It was heavy, but he swung it with all the force he could muster. The wood cracked against the man's chest, sending him stumbling back. For a brief moment, David had space, but it didn't last. The killer was back on him in a second, grabbing him by the throat with a grip that was too tight, too strong. The knife pressed against David's neck, cold steel against his skin. David's vision blurred, his heart thudding in his ears. The killer's face was expressionless, cold, as if he didn't even care. He was simply there to finish what he started. David's fingers tightened around the chair leg, and with one final, desperate surge of strength, he swung it again, this time catching the man across the head. The man staggered back, dazed but not down. David's eyes flicked around the room. His hands were slick with blood, his body on fire with pain. But the man wasn't done yet. David didn't have a choice. He lunged, desperate, attacking with whatever he could grab. The two of them crashed to the floor, struggling, each trying to gain the upper hand. The knife flashed again, but David managed to catch the man's wrist, twisting it until he heard a sickening snap. The blade fell next to him. The killer gasped, but there was no stopping him now. David's mind screamed for him to do something, anything. His fingers found the blade, slick with blood, and with a final, brutal effort, he drove it into the man's chest. The man's body jerked once, then went still. For a moment, David just stared at him, gasping for air, his body shaking uncontrollably. Blood soaked his clothes, dripped from his fingertips. The room was silent except for the sound of his ragged breathing. It was over. The man was dead. David didn't feel relief. He didn't feel anything except the cold emptiness in the room. He pulled himself to his feet, his legs unsteady, his body screaming in pain. He glanced down at the man's body, then at the shattered piano. Nothing but silence now. David turned and stumbled toward the door, the weight of the house pressing on him, the faint sound of the piano echoing in his mind as he stepped back into the night. He didn't look back. Chapter 15, The Aftermath. Sam and Mia. The night was nothing but quiet as Sam and Mia cruised down the empty streets. The city was asleep, its hum barely a whisper as they headed toward the station after checking the crime scene. They had been on edge all day, tracking leads, piecing together fragments of a case that had been dragging them deeper into darkness for weeks. The truth felt just out of reach. Anything on the case? Mia asked, her voice cutting through the silence. She stared out the window, watching the streetlights flash past in rhythmic intervals. Not yet, Sam replied, his tone low. We've got a few leads, but nothing concrete. They were just a few blocks from the station when the radio crackled to life, interrupting the quiet. Unit 23, Unit 23. We have reports of loud noises coming from an abandoned house on the corner of Ashford and Elm. Neighbors heard screams and banging, possibly a disturbance. Units are advised to investigate. Sam's hand hovered over the wheel as the words settled in. His thoughts immediately flickered to the location. Wait a minute, he muttered. He looked at Mia, his brow furrowing. Ashford and Elm, that's David's old neighborhood. Mia's eyes widened. She knew exactly what he meant. David's childhood house, the house he had left years ago, the house where everything had started. It was on Ashford. We should check it out, Mia said, her voice steady despite the weight of the realization. Sam didn't need any more convincing. He nodded, making an immediate left turn onto Ashford Street. The neighborhood was dark, the only sound coming from the rustling of leaves in the wind. The houses stood like forgotten relics, abandoned and in disrepair. Sam's grip tightened on the wheel as they neared the house. It was hard to miss, the dilapidated building with its sagging roof and broken windows. The front door hung half off its hinges, and the yard was overgrown with weeds. But the strangest part was the silence. There was no sign of life. No lights. No movement. They pulled up to the curb. Sam put the car in park and glanced at Mia. She was already watching him, waiting for his next move. "Stay behind me," he said softly, reaching for his radio. He called in their location and the disturbance at the address, giving the team a heads up. The radio crackled in response. "Copy that, Unit 23. Proceed with caution." Sam got out of the car first, his hand brushing his holster as he moved toward the house. Mia followed, her face set in grim determination. The air was heavy, colder than it should have been for this time of year. The closer they got to the house, the more the silence settled in, as though the very space was holding its breath. "I don't like this," Mia muttered under her breath, eyeing the open door. Sam nodded, his gaze narrowing as he reached the front steps. He moved carefully, each footstep muffled by the dry grass, his instincts on high alert. He knew something was wrong. There was an eerie stillness to the air. They crossed the threshold, and the house seemed to exhale, releasing a cold breath that sent shivers down Sam's spine. Dust hung thick in the air, and the house smelled of rot. The old wooden floorboards creaked underfoot as they moved further inside. The dim glow from a small lamp illuminated the hallway ahead, flickering faintly. Then, they heard it. A noise, faint at first, a scrape. The sound of something being dragged across the floor. Mia's breath caught in her throat. Sam's hand instinctively reached for his gun as they both froze in place. "Police, make yourself known," Mia announced. Sam's eyes were already scanning the room ahead. They moved toward the source of the noise, their steps deliberate but quick. The further they went, the more the silence around them seemed oppressive, as if the house itself was waiting. And then they reached the back room. Sam's pulse quickened as they pushed open the door. Inside, the scene that unfolded before them was not what they had expected. David was kneeling on the floor, bloodied and broken. His clothes were torn, and his body was marked with slashes and bruises. He looked like he'd been through hell. His breath was shallow, his eyes wide, but there was no panic in them. Only exhaustion. At his feet, the lifeless body of a man lay sprawled across the floor, blood pooling beneath him. The knife was still lodged deep in his chest. David's head jerked toward them, his gaze vacant, as though he didn't quite understand they were there. He was trembling, but there was no sense of relief or victory in his expression. Just emptiness. He stepped into the room, his eyes darting to the broken furniture, the blood-stained floor. Sam saw David wounded on the floor and began giving him first aid. David's voice came out as a rasp, barely audible. He wouldn't stop. "I couldn't," he trailed off, his hands shaking as they hovered over the knife, his body still in shock. The room was deathly quiet except for the distant hum of police sirens nearing, closer now, echoing through the streets. Sam commanded Mia to check the man laying down next to them. Mia checked the pulse of the man and nodded towards Sam. "It's over. You're safe now," Sam said to David, but he didn't seem to hear him. His gaze was still distant, lost somewhere in the chaos of his mind. His eyes flickered to the body, then back to the room. "I had to. I had no choice." The sound of sirens filled the air as the first of the police cars screeched to a halt outside. Sam and Mia took take outside the house where first responders began assisting him. Sam glanced back toward the house, knowing that his job was done. There was nothing more to say, nothing more to do. The house was silent again, save for the faint echo of piano keys still ringing in David's ears.